Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Before we start with our guest Dharma speaker today, I wonder if we just go through a brief introduction where people can just call out their, well, not call out, but I mean just, but just go around, everybody can just say their name. So I'll start with myself. I'm Clint.
Michael. I'm Pat from Santa Cruz. Terry. Paul. Al. Bob. Nick. Justin. Peter. Paul. Sydney. Scott. Tom. Joe. Patrick. Kevin. Michael. David. Paul. Peter. Brad. Adrian. Steve. Chris. David. King. Brad. Howard. Don. Kevin. Suzanne. Paul. Lee. David. Tree.
Everybody? Great. It's very gratifying to have such a good turnout today. Myo, I'll just read his bio that I have here. Myo Leahy is a priest in the Soto Zen lineage at Shunryu Suzuki Roshi. He began his sitting practice in 1969 and chose to begin full-time training in 1982. He was ordained in 1986, received the Shusho head monk initiation in 1989, and the Shiho Dharma transmission in March of this year from Tenshin Anderson Roshi. Now I'll just turn it over to Myo now.
Thank you, Clint. Good morning. It was nice sitting there and breathing with all of you during our sitting. And in a way, it's a little bit, feels a little bit superfluous now to talk. But that's perhaps, that's the inclination of my particular Dharma family. If you're going to make a mistake with words, which is almost inevitable, maybe it's better to say a little too little than too much. And yet, there's some reason why we make space for something like Dharma talks. We keep doing it, not just here, but Dharma centers everywhere, I think, have Dharma talks. It's one of the things that makes them Dharma centers. So we must want to do that. We must want to hear the teaching. Ideally, when we hear the teaching, though, we recognize it as ours, our own. It's very tempting. It's a danger of this kind of setup, right? I'm sitting up here, you're over there, I have the dress on, you don't. To think that if you hear some Dharma, that it's, somebody else's. That's that guy's. And that's emphatically not the case. So what we want to do is use the artificial setups we create in a way that's helpful to us and not in a way that makes things more difficult. So for us, maybe particularly for us as Westerners, maybe it's a very good exercise that we, do stuff like this. Very nice, simple altar, beautiful rupa or Buddha figure. So we set up stuff like this, and at my house we have a lot of play a lot of dress-up games and do lots of rituals and tons of bowing. And most of us at some point find it quite helpful, actually, because it starts to kind of pulverize the body, to knock the kind of our stiffness out of it, and the stiffness coming from our karma, really. Our karma of finding ourselves in this world where people look like individuals, and to some extent, when that's true, you're always besieged. Right? There's always me and the world. And I'm always going to be patrolling the battlements to make sure that arrangement is not encroached upon by anybody or anything. And this leads to a kind of, we get stiff, and we get, anxious, and maybe in a way our modern life, our modern society, which kind of looks like it aggravates all that stuff, maybe that's helpful in some sense, because it can push us to the point of illness, where we can actually see, that's really not very healthy. And if we were herding goats somewhere, things would be much less acute and maybe much harder to see. Not that goat herds necessarily have an easy life, but the very deep and inherent siege mentality that comes from our ignorance of who we are maybe is a little bit more out of reach. So when we're in extreme situations, it may be easier to see, oh, goodness, I'm constantly up in arms because I think I exist. So all that bowing and accoutrements and Buddha figures and all that stuff can be very helpful as a kind of training for body and mind. It can also be a real hindrance when we impute some kind of literal, permanent value to them that's apart from us. And then we're doing some weird artificial number. And we're just aggravating the spell that we live under, just deepening it. So sometimes it's helpful, maybe your teacher will hit you or something. Not necessarily, but, your teacher and if you don't have a person you call or think of as teacher, then maybe just circumstances will jab you in just the right way. And if you're paying attention, you'll see what you were up to. Like, oh, I made that into a thing. I thought Buddha was a thing and up there, and I had to get there, and that bent me even further. That made even a worse cramp in my muscles. So this is very helpful when it happens. So I should shut up around 1/2 or something, or whenever, because I actually really like to, if people feel like sharing their own dharma, their own person to have questions or make comments, so I can leave some time for that. Your show. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. I actually didn't set out to talk about any of that stuff that I just talked about, so I should get back to my topic, such as it is. some years ago, a long time ago now, I lived in the East Bay in Berkeley, and I think this must have been the late 70s or thereabouts, and spent a good part of my time chasing boys. It seemed to be the thing to do in those days. But I heard there was a radio program on probably KPFA, it wouldn't have been anything else, called Fruit Punch, which some of you probably remember. I think it was running back then. Was it? And there was one show that had some guys, I think it was all men, reading their poetry. These were like gay poets who were reading poems. And I don't remember anything about any of the poems except one, which was so arresting at the time that I just stopped. I was puttering around my apartment. I just stopped and listened to it. It just totally caught my attention. I don't remember the poet's name. I remember his voice, which was very soft. And I remember the passion of his poetry, which was very beautiful and quite, in a way, even in those days, kind of radical. It's like this guy was out there. And didn't care what people thought. And I really only remember 2 lines of the poem. The kind of more shocking line was, "I cup your balls." Which is like, whoa. But the line that really echoes in my mind was the first line of the poem, which was, "No one knows how to love me like a man." And that's all it stayed in my mind ever since. And recently I was thinking, I think that's true, actually. And that is, in fact, our great challenge and our great joy, that is so. No one knows how to love me like a man. And I don't know the poet, but my belief, the story I made up about his poem was that he was saying, well, I get involved with people and various things happen, but it's always like they're trying to follow some kind of script. And there isn't one. There are no, we don't grow up in this society knowing how to love like men. We don't know how. It's not taught. You can love your wife, your kids, your parents, but to love another man like a man, you're on your own. And that is a phenomenal freedom. And it's also very frightening. Because just as the potential for immense joy is there, there's also potential for damage. I don't think there's any way to avoid that. I was thinking, in my kind of ex-Catholic way, that's not really true. I'm not really an ex-Catholic. I'm kind of not a recovering Catholic. It's like after many years of Dharma practice, now I love Catholicism. But at first, I didn't want anything more to do with it. And now, looking at it through another window, I find it magnificent, but that's another story. But still you hear stuff like people saying, the Bible says homosexuality is a terrible thing. And it's right there, you can read it. And Catholics say this, and fundamentalist Christians say this, and ho-hum. So I was recalling, looking in Leviticus, which is kind of the locus classicus of complaints about homosexuality, and translations differ, and we won't even get into the political nature of translation. No, we're not going to talk about that. But it says something like, you shall not lie with a man as with a woman, for it is anathema. Oh, okay. And I was thinking, I know what that means. That means if you lie with a man, it has to be as with a man. Not just like, oh, well, I'm horny and there's a guy, so I guess I'll have sex with him. No, that's not right. If you lie with a man, you're lying with a man. And that is truth. That is not anathema. Because it is true. So, this is my interpretation of Leviticus anyway. And if you have fundamentalist friends, please pass that on. So, if it's true that no one knows how to love me like a man, then what do we do? We just threw away our maps and so forth, so now what are we going to do? Well, that's up to you. That's up to us, actually. I think the important aspects, not just for our affectional life, but life, period, are do no harm and do not engage in falsehood. Those are really indispensable, I find, and very hard. It's very difficult. You know how easy it is to do harm? Oh, yeah, probably you do. And how easy it is to speak falsehood, to depart from your Dharma place, just because, actually what's true is this, but I'm going to say this because it's so much more convenient, and then I can go home and watch TV. So everyone does that. I do that. And what's great is to cultivate the sense of what the difference feels like, so you can know. Well, actually, I'm going to speak falsely, and yes, I'm going to do that. And sometimes, of course, that's actually what's called for. Maybe compassion calls out a certain kind of falsehood. It's, I think, just the way it is. I have a great fondness for old Zen stories, as some of you may know. It's a weakness, I admit. They're, to me, a bottomless pit of Dharma. It's just an endless source of the teaching. And an awful lot of them, probably not all of them, but an awful lot of them have been translated into English for some odd reason. And you can find one for almost any occasion if you search around. So sure enough, I was browsing through the Book of Serenity the other day and came across case number 20, which is known as Ditsang's nearness. And, I don't read Chinese, so who knows whether it's a, quote, accurate, unquote, translation or not. I did some translating myself in college from Sanskrit, and from what I remember, when you translate, you're always making stuff up. I mean, what are you going to do? You kind of have to. Anyway, this version, there's kind of usually like an introduction to the story. The introduction says something like, I'm paraphrasing most of this. The great road to the capital goes 7 ways across and 8 ways up and down. It's like, oh, Jesus, that sounds like kind of a pain in the neck. But if we're going to go to the capital, what are we going to do? That's the road. If you can open your mouth and explain fully, if you can walk and speak, then you can hang your begging bowl and bag up high and break your staff. Meaning, you can stop your traveling and hunting around because you're done. And then Wansong, the collector of these stories, says, "Tell me, who is that? Who is that person who can break his staff and sit down by the fire? Well, that's you. That's his point. But sometimes before we settle with that, we have to put ourselves through, a course of study or a period of torture or I don't know what. But anyway, we're hard to convince, most of us. So the story is very simple and short. The teacher was, in this instance anyway, was Ditsang. And Ditsang was a cousin of mine, I like to think, a Dharma cousin. He's descended from Shirto Shichan, who was a student of Qingyuan, who was one of the sixth ancestors, star pupils. And his line kind of goes like this, and ours kind of goes like that. So we're cousins, and he was known to his friends as Arhat Ditsang. You know what an Arhat is? The one who has achieved the culmination of the one of the oldest formulations of the Buddhist path. So an Arhat has ended, cut all the 10 fetters and ended all outflows, and pretty cool, you know. It's a practice very much concerned with purity and austerity and exertion. So I actually don't know why they called him Arhat Ditsang. This being the kind of the Zen school, sort of, I wondered if it was a little tongue-in-cheek. Maybe. Oh yeah, he thinks he's an Arhat. Anyway, they called him that, and one of his students was named, at least later, Fayan. And Fayan, as you may know, was one of the founders of one of the great schools of Zen practice. But at this point, he was still a student. And he had decided, as they did back then, to go wander around and visit other teachers. Because when he was with Ditsang, nothing much happened. So, okay, I'm going to go shopping. So he's getting ready to go, and Ditsang comes up to say farewell. And Ditsang says to him, "So, where are you off to?" And Fayan says, "Oh, I'm going on pilgrimage." All the great mountains, Buddhist practice mountains in China. And Ditsang says to him, "So, what's the purpose of pilgrimage?" And Fayan says, "I don't know." And Ditsang says, well, not knowing is nearest. And at this point, Fayan wakes up. We could say, breaks his staff. Now, it's impossible for us to reconstruct that story about those two guys as though they were someone else than us. I mean, you can do that, but it's not very useful. So always remember, some people, I have a good friend who asked me, "Oh, what are you going to talk about on Sunday at the GBF?" And I said, maybe something from the Book of Serenity. And he goes, "Man, I hate that crap." How dare you hate that crap. Anyway, actually that's a good Zen utterance. I hate that crap. Much of the time I find when people have that reaction to, the koan literature, it's because they don't know it's about them. It's about some Chinese guys, I don't know, 1,300 years ago. What's that got to do with me? Well, it's got everything to do with you, and that's why they're so vital, these stories. So, Ditsang tells Fayan, "Oh yeah, not knowing is nearest." Well, nearest what? Well, nearest us, who we really are. Nearest the place where we really live, where there's no traveling, There's no coming or going. And I'm not saying not knowing is that. I'm just saying it's nearest. So in other words, Mr. Fayun, you're about as close as you can get right now. What are you traveling about? Oh, okay, I get it. My feeling is that for us as gay men, and for us just as humans, that's actually our map. And that when we're in, our intimate relations with our lovers, if we have them, or even not, just with people, the consummate challenge is to enter that space of not knowing with them and just be there. No idea what's going to happen. I won't say no preconceived notions, because of course we have those. But recognizing them for what they are when they come up. Realizing their ability to pressure and deform our genuine life if we're not careful. And in so doing, escape their power. Now that's pretty tricky. And there's a real catch in here, which I'm sure some of you have figured out already. First of all, the other party has to be interested in that. And I haven't met anybody who's really interested in that, I'll have to tell you. Sometimes when I talk about relationships, some, spoiler in the audience will say, "Excuse me, have you done this?" I'll go, "Well, I tried." But even if I haven't, nothing that I have seen in my life suggests to me that this is not so. What I have been looking for is contrary evidence, and I have not seen it. I still think that this is so. I still think that the brick and mortar, well, there isn't really any. The living tissue of relationship comes from intention and not much else. Otherwise, it's just karmic happenstance. And intention, you might say, is the soft light in the region of not knowing that illuminates our steps. Well, I don't know what I'm doing, and neither does so-and-so over here, but our intention is speak the truth, live the truth, do no harm. And at some point we may say, and not only that, our intention is to do it together. We might say that. And I would caution us not to say that too lightly, because if you say it in a way that suggests that then you can unsay it later, it's like, it doesn't count. It doesn't really count. So don't say it until you say it, and then zip. And that's just a suggestion. You can do what you want, of course. Yikes. Anyway, Wansong, the collector of the Book of Serenity, right away after the case, talks about the catch, the trap. He says something like, today, people hear this stuff about not knowing is nearest, and right away, they settle down with not knowing and not understanding. And they say stuff like, "Oh, just this is it." That is a deadly trap. Why? Because you've just made not knowing another thing where you're going to hang out. You can't do that. So, you can't... Not knowing is not another town you can move to. This is the trap. It's also true about our sitting practice. Do we have any Rinzai practitioners in here? Any Rinzai Zen guys? No? Okay. supposedly there was a controversy, many, many centuries ago between these two Zen teachers, one sort of Rinzai, one sort of Soto, about how to practice Zen. And one would say, well, it seems as though we kind of made up this controversy in subsequent centuries. It doesn't seem like these two guys they may even have been friends for all we know. But we have some of their correspondence, and so we gathered that they were like fighting about how do you do Zen. And one said, we should just sit, And then he wrote this poem that has this beautiful line about clear water all the way down. A fish swims lazily along. Vast heavens without boundaries. A bird flies far, far away. And the other guy supposedly shot back and said, that is Mo Jiao Chan, which is silent illumination Zen. That's nothing. And the other guys, kind of the way we took the word fag and kind of took it back and said, yeah, we're fags. Said, yeah, silent illumination Zen, that's us. We love that. The other gang is saying, no, you must take the words of the ancients and you must focus the entire energy of your life on a word or phrase and penetrate it. This is Kanwa-chan, or Kanna-zen, this is a study of the words or the text, the koan. Koan studies in. Now, what each of them did was point out the weakness of the other's approach. And there is always a weakness. As soon as you have an approach, you have a weakness. So one is, are we going to get mired in the swamp of quietism? I'm meditating. This is Zen, man. This is great. Is that what we're going to do? Or are we going to go in for the dramatic distortion and run around shouting and breaking up the furniture? Is that what we're going to do? So this controversy that we've recorded is actually very helpful because it says, watch out for that pile of crap that you're going to step in if you're not careful. It's the same with this not knowing business. If you think not knowing is a place you can go to, then you're going to fall into a dark pit and you may not get out for quite a while. As one song says later, when it's time to affirm, just affirm. Affirm completely, but don't settle down there. When it's time to negate completely, but don't settle down there. So what he's doing is just sketching the bare outline, like a Asian ink painting, just the outline of how to live or practice in not knowing what that looks like. And I think we can carry this even into our relationships. And maybe as gay men, we have to, actually. We're pioneers. Especially nowadays when we're a little bit less outlaws, a little bit. But we're still pioneers with no maps. And various people certain maps have kind of come up from various places for us as gay men. And some were helpful and some weren't so helpful. And better probably we shouldn't rely on any maps. At one time we had, when I was in Berkeley in the 70s, being very actively sexual was kind of a map, It's like, here's one way to get out of the closet. Knock it down. Set it on fire. Blow the door off. That was one way. It has, in this world of karma, this world of cause and effect, there are consequences. And I remember I had a doctor this was like in 1980. Things were just a little kind of dicey then already, right? The doctor I was saying doctor, I read the papers, there's all these weird illnesses out there. I feel like I should just stay home and drink tea. And he says, no, go out and have fun. That's what life's about. And if you get something, we'll fix you up. I thought, oh, okay. But you know what? No. It doesn't always work that way. Because this is the world of cause and effect. So every step we take means something. So we have to be very, very careful. And even so, things will happen. Even if we're determined not to harm, not to speak falsely, things will happen. Well, I don't know. There's this poem that Wansong wrote, but I'm kind of feeling like I've talked enough. And I'm sure people have some, maybe, questions or, yeah.
I have a question about not knowing. Is there such a thing as spiritual laziness that uses not knowing as a convenient excuse for not trying to learn or get a bigger perspective?
Alas, I think so, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's kind of what...
I mean, how you distinguish between spiritual laziness
yeah.
and
yeah. Man, that's tricky. I mean, like, that's like the question, in a way. Especially maybe for Soto Zen types, like me. How do you know if you're just, like, flaking off? Well, first of all, if you're committed to the practice of honesty, it's probable that the information coming back to us, from our life, will contain hints that maybe that's happening. Well, how would that be? Well, how about when something comes up that challenges us a little bit? Challenges are what we think of as our not knowing, our place of stable, calm, collected, abiding. And maybe we get a little mad, for instance. Or when some friend tells us, you know what, I think you're getting kind of stuffy. Like, how dare you? I'm not stuffy. Things like that actually are happening all the time. And I feel like if I'm attentive, actually, I will pick up on the fact that, I think I got sticky there. I think I'm sticky. I think I was sticking to I had some idea about how I was supposed to do this practice or this life crept up on me, and I didn't notice. And it was very comfortable. And that's a critical danger when, someone gives you Dharma transmission, right? And then people start to relate to you a little bit in a certain way, and next thing you know, you've got a little comfortable cabin in the woods, And then, well, the world is always knocking on the door. I mean, water's running, I don't hear anything. And that can be very dangerous, because then you start to believe that stuff. In his poem, that I'm not going to tell you about, Wansong says something like, having studied to the full, all is as it once was again. And then he says, having rid himself of the most subtle thread, he reaches not knowing. So that means the thread of not knowing, that one's got to go too. And what does that look like? We don't know. You can't know. The practice itself seems to have, I don't know if this has been your experience, but it seems to have stuff built into it that once you you're starting to make a little, pitch your tent somewhere and get comfortable, something starts to pluck at it. If you're practicing, something will be in there kind of eroding your little island. So, and to keep the question that you've just raised, to keep that kind of alive, I think is very important, very useful. Just, that's a possibility. Is that happening? Your teacher, if there is a teacher in your life, can be helpful. And we have this story we made up about how, well, my teacher's teacher was so-and-so, and then so-and-so was back further, and then all the way back to Buddha. And if you believe that. You can actually think, well, actually, my teacher at least has that function in my life, and I've given permission to her or him to poke me when I need it. Jab me in the ribs and say, I think you're sticky. So fortunately, there are bodhisattvas swarming all over the place who, if we're listening, will help us out with that particular, very deep trap. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Not knowing is terrifying, and there's nothing, everything is full of it. And the only, my life, everyone's life, we have a design and then we live something else. You don't know what you're doing. And Kosho at the Zen Center, when I was really when I felt that I was not in a position to follow this advice, said, trust your life. And I realized actually I had in a lot of ways. That's a really hard thing to do and really simple, trust your life. Your talk was really far-ranging. I don't know what my question is, so let me just see if I can find it. The line about, what's the first line of the poem?
No one knows how to love me like a man.
And cupping a person's balls makes me want to tell these people that testament and testi are from the same root. Some of you know that, some of you don't. And that the custom, I don't know whether it is Hebrew or generally Semitic, is when you take an oath, a really important oath, you hold the other person's testes, and he holds yours.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on my way over here on the 22, passing Mission Dolores, two things struck me. First was that there were several gay men in the backyard of the mission doing things. So I thought, gay congregants. And the other thing that happened was that there were three old men on the corner, looking like Ireland, Italy, and Spain. They were just wonderful. Talking. I was thinking, this is something that's about religion is happening here. Because for me, it's not only difficult to lie with a man, it's difficult to sit or to stand as well. I don't know what we're doing. Sometimes it is very disconcerting when the least connection you make is in the most intimate part of your life, and your second part of your life. With someone whom you've had very close contact with, you can be lying with that person and going, I'm not connecting in the same way as I was standing or sitting with this person. What's my question? What do you got to say about that?
Nothing. Thanks.
I'm just thinking about the first thing you said. About not talking to something so profound.
What's your dime, guys? It's sometimes a little hard to create Dharma space like this, so it's great to use it. I mean, you can even say, I hated your talk or whatever. But it's just good to, I don't know, share your life. Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about beginner's mind and coming back to it. I was away from Buddhism for a long time, and then came back to it, and I realized that in me I had all these conceptions of what I understood things like the precepts to be, and practices to me, and coming back after an absence gave me a kind of beginner's mind. And I guess when I find myself in a place of fear of not knowing, I try to remind myself of beginner's mind, and that helps keep me open.
That I guess I am going to, by the time I'm done, I will have said most of this poem, and I keep saying I'm not going to say it. There's another line which is, let, short be short. Let long be long. Stop cutting and patching. So that's very difficult when, we're afraid. It's my immediate reaction is, I'm going to fix this. I don't like being afraid. But the teaching actually is, no. Don't do that. You don't get to shove your fear away, and you don't get to wallow in it. So then what's the proper distance? We don't know. But stop cutting and patching. You can't fix it. All you can do is be an unflinching witness. And that's the truth. That's your truth right there. I'm afraid. I'm dying. I'm angry. I'm aroused. Whatever it is. I'm sad. That's the truth. Break your staff. Hang up your bowl. That's a big challenge. And for the Zenists, it's probably the biggest challenge. Break your staff. Sit down where you are. Tough to do, sort of.
I have a very close friend whom I talk to about once every 2 weeks who lives in Santa Fe. And he, of course, is a gay man, and his partner are raising a son, his biological son. And I'm always very interested in that process, and so I asked him about it. He told me about the part where now there is some struggle with the woman who was his wife about this is a teenage son, exactly what to do. What I could hear was this enormous sadness in him, because I know very deeply his intentions of love and nurture and support towards his son, and in fact even towards this woman who used to be his partner. And as I could hear that, there was a part of me that was a little drawn to wanting to make him feel better, but I kind of put that aside, and I kind of, really spoke directly to the sadness and said really what a gift it was that he had so much sadness, that he could be so much in touch with his original intention, and that things had taken a turn that he wouldn't have wished, but he had no control over. And that to just allow, just to keep allowing the sadness was a kind of gift that I, for one, was receiving from him on the telephone. But two, was also a kind of gift for his son, so that, he could be exposed to the fact that sometimes even adults don't really know what to do. And so, just being present. What was very interesting was at the very end, he told me how much he loved me, and what I was really experiencing was not just his feelings towards me, but his feelings towards himself that were boiling, that were coming up. The feelings of his being able to have the room to just be totally present with himself, to have no answers.
I just want to interject. We have time for maybe one more comment or question. So, Terry would be the last.
Thank you for your talk. I liked it a lot. It brought me close to some fear in me. So I have a comment and a question. The comment is that I kept hearing the first line of the poem that you seem to be saying meant to you. No one knows how to love me as a man. And I heard it, no one knows how to love me like a man knows how to love me. And I think both are there. But my question is, by hearing you open me to some fear. I've been in a relationship for 20 years, and during the past year, my partner and I separated for 6 months, and we're back together. And you sort of gave words to what we're experiencing right now, which is the being together in a don't-know way, which is much more vulnerable and intimate. And my question is, you mentioned intention, and I just wonder if you could say a little bit more about intention in relation to that aspect of being together.
May I ask you, if I ask you, what is your intention? What might that call up from you?
Well, the intention is to be together in as open and honest as a way as possible.
Well, that's pretty good. As Dharma practitioners,
I keep forgetting it.
yeah, naturally. As Dharma practitioners, I think, for all of us, there's the intention to embody Buddha's way. Period. And again, I don't know what that means. What the hell is that? I don't know what that is. But I am going to do that, but that's not how it works. That is the intention that I make over and over again. I'm going to embody Buddha's way. And that's all I'm going to, that is my life. Okay? And my relationship is within that compass. And it must be. And if it's not, then, I'm just going to let it go. No reason it can't be. But maybe, the other party says, well, I don't like that. That's not interesting to me. I'm not inspired by that or encouraged by that. I think it's dumb, whatever. And then it's like, oh, well, gosh, Or they may say, well, what does that mean? I say, well, it means, I actually have to practice honesty and not harming, and respect, and gratitude, and non-attachment. With you. Without fail, always. And when I do fail, I go back again, and again, and again. That's what it means. If they're smart, they'll say, great, that's what I'm after. But maybe they have some obscuration from their karma, and they say, actually, no thanks. I mean, it sounds good, but it's too much. And people, in my experience, mostly say that. It's too much. I don't want to do that. And it doesn't matter when you tell them, yes, you do. Don't you realize? That's all you want. Oh, no. Thank you. I'm going to go date this other guy who isn't quite so amped as you are, or whatever it is. So, intention's a big topic, but it's kind of...
I can't really tell the other person to do that.
Nah.
Why don't you want to tell us the poem that you recently told us?
Well, I think because I've forgotten part of it, actually. But I will leave you with the next to last line. Let's see if I can remember it. It's... Hang on now. So this is a little off, but it's something like, walking at ease through the land, he follows his nose. So that's how you do it, basically. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.